You're listening to The Voice of Reason with Mark Reed and Ted Durden, only on LA Talk Radio.
Good evening and welcome to another episode of The Voice of Reason. My name is Ted Durden.
And my name is Mark Reed. I'm a West Coast Democrat. I'm a West Coast Republican, and my co-host is a Southern Democrat. You forgot that.
That's all right. For those of you who are tuning in for the very first time, this is a politically motivated podcast where civil discourse is the order of the day. Where Mark and I believe there are more things that unite us than there are things that divide us. And as I do every week, I'll toss the ball over to my co-host, Mark Reed.
Well, we had the passing of a congressman in the House, Elijah Cummings.
Right.
And regardless of whether you liked him or disliked him, you thought he was a crook or not a crook, he had an amazing history in growing up.
He did.
A family member of the sharecroppers.
Yes.
He really pulled his bootstraps up, made something out of himself. So It really doesn't matter whether you liked him or not, or if you thought he was a crook in Baltimore. You know, he still served his country the best way that he possibly could and with the ideals that he had. And it would be remiss of me not to at least acknowledge Elijah Cummings on the show this evening, because it is the premise of what our show is all about.
Absolutely. He was an icon. He was a giant. He will be sorely missed.
He will be missed. And that's part of what makes this country great, is having that opposing thought process and diversity of thought to keep everybody in check. And he did.
Yes, he did.
He kept them in check. I mean, he's kind of like the African-American Donald Trump. He really didn't care what he had to say. He just said it.
He was unabashed about it.
That's right. He wasn't shy.
No, he wasn't.
On our show this evening, we have a special guest friend, Bruce Bialosky. And I know I messed your name up again, but it's okay. He's humorous about it because he harasses me all the time. You're not the first. I'm not the first. I won't be the last. So I'll just continue to call you Bruce now.
Yes.
And I won't call you the other names I usually call you. But Bruce, I know that you've come on, and Bruce is a CPA. He has a column that he writes every week, right, on the issues pertaining to national or more, whatever, tickles his fancy sometimes, because I get them, I read them. They're actually really good. And your website for your columns or where?
Where I'm currently publishing is flashreport.org.
Flashreport.org.
Yes.
So you can look him up on there and read his pieces, and I think they're good. I've read several of them, and I've had little comments back and forth. The last one, he said he didn't want to touch my reply with a 10-foot pole. I asked Bruce to come on because he's a very intelligent individual, and he wouldn't tell me what he wanted to talk about. He said he wanted to talk about the issues facing California. As we all know, California's got a lot of issues going on.
Yeah.
I wanted to preface this, and that is how many issues could be resolved by the federal government if they just leaned on the supremacy clause of the Constitution of the United States, Article 6, Clause 2, which establishes that the Constitution of the federal laws that other parts of the Constitution empower Congress to make, as treaties made under this authority, constitute the supreme law of the land and thus take priority over any conflicting state laws. It provides that the state courts are bound by the Supreme Court. Even state constitutions are subordinate to the federal law. But notwithstanding this, federal acts and other statutes are supreme only if they do not contravene the Constitution. I wanted to touch on that really quick because we have what do you call that, sanctuary state. We have sanctuary counties. We have sanctuary cities. We have the theft of our taxes going to illegals in the state of California. Why doesn't the federal government just use the supremacy law to override these things and put the state of California in sync?
Because the state of California thinks it's a republic. And you're so far from what the thinking of the California government is and the people currently in Sacramento that the federal government has supremacy. Their attitude is it's reversed. They have supremacy, and the laws that they are making should be accepted and actually transferred to the other 49 states. That is the attitude of the government.
Right.
This is part of the reason that we have an attorney general who, since Donald Trump has been
How many times has he
president.
sued him?
Over 60 now.
Over 60 times. How
Over
many?
60
How many of those
times.
lawsuits have the state of California won?
I don't know that figure, but I can. The thing that I keep on looking for is our Attorney General is Javier Becerra,
Right.
and he keeps on saying he's doing other work, but I don't know what else
don't know what
he's
he's
doing
doing either.
other than suing Donald Trump every time he takes a policy position. And so you're saying that the United States government has supremacy. It does. There's clearly divided in our U.S. Constitution the rights to certain things.
Right.
And you're referring to the things that you believe that they do. Most of the things are left to the state.
Oh yeah.
But they think that even before there was our current government and our current governor, for example, we had a national EPA, and the state of California had their own EPA, and they had. And one of the big fights that they're having is over the fact that the state of California has their own mileage rules regarding cars. We have now. How many? I'll ask you a question.
Okay.
Either one of you can answer this. How many different kinds of gasoline are there?
How many different blends or gasoline? There's three
there's
gasolines.
three,
There's
yeah.
three octane levels, but the blends, I believe there's 27.
No, there's like across the country, there's something
Well, across
over
the
200
country.
250, which most people are stunned.
Right.
I don't have the exact figures. I wrote a column about this a while ago. East St. Louis has a different blend than
Right.
St. Louis.
Right.
But the state of California has a completely different blend from anywhere else. The only way we can get gasoline is within the state of California.
Right.
And the cost of our gasoline currently is 50% higher than the average in the other 48 states. I won't include Hawaii. Let's say 47 states.
Right.
The lower 48. Okay. So this has been building more and more and more that California perceives itself as a separate entity.
Well, let me ask you a question on that point, though. Would it be fair to say that California may be unique as far as when it comes to emissions on the cars? So that and because of the volume of cars that we have here in this state, that might account for why the blends are different. Is the purpose of the blends to reduce the amount of emissions? Is that what it is?
Correct, and it's seasonal, and it
Okay.
changes, and you'll notice that usually the price of gasoline changes in I think it's late October, early November, because there's a difference change, a difference, and there's a price hike at that time. But that's just an attitude, and it's one of the things that along the way kept on being done. The mileage regulations, the separate EPA, the separate kind of work rules. One of the things that the state of California recently did was they completely changed the treatment of employees versus independent contractors. Now, this was actually a Supreme Court ruling a year ago, about a year and a half ago now, but you have to understand that the Supreme Court of the state of California is made up of 7 very left-wing people. And so they are part of the political process in the state of California. They decided on their own, the Supreme Court, to make up completely different rules from any other state and the federal government, which for the most part the other states and California had followed the federal government rules of how you treat someone as an employee versus a contractor.
Independent contractor. It's called a 1099 forms.
Right. Now the rules that were developed by these 7 judges who probably never worked in private industry, probably never had controlled a company or signed a paycheck, determined out of whole cloth what they felt were the rules, and they should be.
And that's affecting a tremendous amount of the employees.
We don't know.
Tell me about the rule, because
we don't know how bad it's going to be yet.
Some of our listeners may not know what rule was changed. So how was the relationship changed?
Basically now, before there was 12 steps, federal rules basically that guided you, and they were facts and circumstances as to whether you were treated as an employee. Now there's three very strict governances as to whether you're treated as an employee in the state of California. and which basically an employment attorney said to me, if you're not a plumber, forget it, you're an employee. If you work at somebody's office and yes, there's no question, there's a lot of employers over the years, even some larger employers who have treated people as independent contractors when they should be treated as employees and get the benefits of being employee, etc. Some of the people want to be treated as independent contractors. Now, you can't. It's virtually impossible to be treated as an independent contractor unless you do something like myself, a CPA, which I obviously am not working for any of my clients, or a lawyer for the most part. And the big fight is going to be is really focused on the gig economy, and Uber is already making motions that they're going to have a proposition on the ballot regarding this to change the rules.
Was that was why the law came to effect, is because basically the taxi cab unions went after Uber and Lyft.
Right. Yeah, they did.
And they wanted to change the rules, but they didn't realize the ripple effect, the impact, the impact and the consequences, the ripple effect.
Yes,
it's huge.
But that's just symptomatic of another thing, that the state of California is going a different way, and I wrote a column recently because President Trump was in California. And during that time, Governor Newsom stated some things that were contrary to what President Trump was trying to focus on. They're kind of at loggerheads. But he made a statement, I'd really like to take the opportunity to read it, because it was the basis of my column. And Governor Newsom was interviewed by CNN when he made the following statements. So Trump, has got to find the areas where we are not performing. That is the issues of poverty, affordability, and homelessness, and exploit these as ways of tearing down a new governing philosophy. Well, I looked at that and nobody really picked that up. They kind of went by.
Right.
I thought that was a staggering comment for two reasons. One, he said he's picking on these three areas as if poverty, affordability, and homelessness aren't like a huge aspect of this state and the problems in this state.
Absolutely.
And for example, let's comment shortly on homelessness. I read this today in the New York Times. There's an estimated 130,000 people in the state of California that are homeless. That's 25% of the total homeless population in the United States in California. Now, they will argue, the people who rule California will say, oh, they're here because of the weather. No, it's because of the policies that keep being stated. And they don't have a clue that they can't solve the homelessness. They're spending hundreds of millions of dollars on it, and they can't solve it because they don't know how to deal with it.
Well,
and they think it's an issue of homes.
But it's a talking point to them, because I know here in the city of Los Angeles, they keep pumping this whole idea of the homelessness. It's affordable housing. It's affordable housing.
No, but
they want affordable units, but yet 19,000, I believe it's 19,888 medium, what do you call it, income apartment units were approved by the city of Los Angeles, and 255 low-income units were taken off of the market. So they have a great talking point, but it really isn't the reality the way they act.
Well, not just that. When you look at the economics of it, it's just beyond the pale, because they're spending so much money. And we talked about this, I think, on one of the previous podcasts.
Times, yeah.
Yes. As far as the cost per capita for these units, it exceeds millions of dollars, and it makes absolutely no sense whatsoever.
Zero.
It doesn't.
A young man who I know who's now transplanted to Texas, like a lot of people have done, Texas, Nevada, Utah, and he fought in an area right near here where the studio is. He fought with Councilman Ryu regarding, they wanted to put in a facility for people who were homeless.
Transitional housing, they're calling it, with wraparound services.
And the cost of the units, and these are not full one bedrooms. The cost to build the units were over $500,000.
Right.
I mean, it's like, really?
It's up to $720,000.
I was going to say, right.
Yeah.
It's over 700,000 right
I
now.
mean, it's crazy.
It is.
It's crazy, but they don't understand that the rules they put in the first place cause the problems. So this is a hard thing for me to deal with, because we've had a bit of our fire season. It's been a lot better this year than it was certainly last year, which was terrible. But the reality of one of the things that happen, they never think through their policies. And what are they trying to do? They're trying to get everybody off of natural gas. They're trying to get them off of gas,
Fossil fuels,
and they're trying to get them onto electric cars. So what happened? All the people in the fire area, they had no way to get their cars started, because they were fortunate enough to get their cars started, and then people went nuts because they couldn't even start the cars. If they did it, they had to do it with a gas generator, and it's kind of you feel sorry for these poor people, but at the same time you got to laugh at the folly of how this government is run.
Right now, I want you to hold that thought.
Hold that thought. We're going to pay our bills, and when we come back, we were talking about property taxes, which I know everybody's got an issue with that. So we're going to tackle that issue when we come back after our break.
Right. We are brought to you by Paintball USA. For the best paintball experience of your life, call 661-255-5332. Ask for April and mention the Voice of Reason and get a 25% discount off all your regular price packages. If you want a fantastic outing for the family and friends, or if you're a corporation looking for that magic team building exercise, check out Paintball USA. All packages include admission, air gun rental, complete safety equipment, party favors, and 500 paintballs to use accordingly. That's Paintball USA at 661-255-5332. Don't forget to mention the Voice of Reason to get your 25% discount. The Voice of Reason is also brought to you by churchandlaw.com at 818-230-3110. If you have any questions or need legal advice about workers' compensation, employment, and labor law, call churchandlaw.com at 818-230-3110. The Voice of Reason is also brought to you by Honda. Additionally, The Voice of Reason is brought to you by Levin and Nalbandian Trial Lawyers at 213-232-4848. If you have any workers' compensation, employment, and labor law or personal injury legal needs, call Levin and Albandia at 213-232-4848.
Welcome back to the Voice of Reason, and as promised, we're going to tackle the issue of property taxes. We're having a fascinating conversation in the green room regarding that 41 states have lower taxes, property taxes, than us. 7 states have higher property taxes than us. I asked the question, are they Democrat-run states? And yep, they are. And Prop 13 is supposed to save us from these high property taxes. And there are actually going to be 2 bills on the ballot in November that are going to attack Prop 13 as well. Tell me a little bit about your research there, Bruce.
This was actually an analysis by a gentleman named Richard Ryder. Mm-hmm. And he did you would think that the one beacon of salvation for taxes in the state of California we always talk about is Proposition 13, which was now 40 plus years old.
Right.
And since its passage, it has been there's been multiple attempts to carve out from it, particularly with the idea that commercial buildings, office buildings, should be treated differently.
Apartments too, any commercial building.
Right.
Apartment buildings are going to get hit too. It's going to create more homelessness.
Right. Well, as if the people who don't go in the store, aren't going to pay a higher price because the landlord has passed through to the retailer the property taxes. And
the same thing with your services as a CPA. You have your office building. You're going to charge more because you have to pay. You have to pass the cost on.
And I was fascinated. I can't remember which one of them in the Democratic debates. I think it was in the first one, the twin back to back. One of the people actually pointed this out. I couldn't believe they actually understood the concept that if you pass through you have higher taxes, it passes through to if you use a lawyer, he's going to charge you more.
Right.
If you use a chiropractor, he's going to charge you more because he's renting space and the property taxes go up. So they've been trying to bifurcate this thing. So we always thought, we've got better property taxes. Well, we don't. 41 states have lower property taxes than the state of California. We are 53.6% higher already than the average property tax in the United States. There are only 8 states that are lower than us and that are higher than us, and they're all 8 are, as you described, Mark, they would be characterized as your classic Massachusetts, New Jersey, Connecticut,
Virginia, Chicago,
that are really
Illinois.
They're really problematic tax states, and so our only salvation supposedly as a state tax wise, because everything else is at the top. We're fighting with maybe 2 or 3 states, New Jersey and New York, for top tax rates overall. It's not a salvation anyway. Already, and they want to carve out more, so we pay more. Part of the thing is that the people bring this on themselves to accept, the voters, because we keep on approving these initiatives, and they are passed through initiatives that go on our property tax bill.
Oh yeah,
or every year it seems like they're approving another $2 billion bond initiative for the schools of Los Angeles, and we don't seem to be getting any better schools.
Yeah, where's the money going? Exactly, where's the money going?
And
it's like when they get into the voting booth, they're not really looking or paying attention to the way the initiative is written. They just aren't. They're just signing off.
That's all fraud the way they write it.
It really and truly is. And all they see is it's for the school or it's for the kids, and then they sign off on it, not realizing what the long-term effect is going to be.
Absolutely. And the other thing is, depending on who's in control, and for a while in this state for 20 plus years, the Democrats have been in control. They control how the description of the initiative is written and how it's titled. Right. So, and which you could say it's intentional.
Well, doesn't Secretary of State put out a request to all of the schools, right, to be able to write up the pro and the con? But he gets to pick the one he wants, and it favors what they want, which is a Democrat.
Right. And so people aren't really even qualified to vote on a lot of these things.
No.
That's why they put the thing in. No. And they just don't think the way through, and then they don't understand why their property tax has gone up significantly because of these bond issues.
Right. Yeah.
Well, AB 32 was basically the carbon tax in the state of California that passed. It gives the AQMD the ability to tax on top of gas 96 cents. We're already gone up just a little bit, but Newsom and Brown didn't put it into effect. They passed another 12-cent tax on gas. They didn't tell you that 85% of that tax collected was going to go for beautification projects. Now Gavin Newsom has taken the money, the majority of it, and given it to other projects other than fixing the infrastructure of our road systems.
So going back to, you started with the fact that the government, the national government should try to clamp down on some of these things where they have control. But the fact is, as I stated, the second part of what I read, the way of tearing down a new governing philosophy, the state of California is attempting to pass this on to other states. The new rules regarding the independent contractors, other states are going to take those up. And they're going to adopt them also and make it more difficult within their states to hire people. And then you'll see that a state that, like North Carolina, that doesn't adopt them, all of a sudden has a lot more people moving to it.
Being a CPA, do you think it's mainly just to generate more tax revenue off the workers' back? Is that the reason why they're doing it, Bruce?
I think there's a certain aspect of, there's no question that some people were not properly treating people who were working at their business. But you don't do it by a shotgun effect like this and making it so difficult for people, and that they have made it impossible for employers to be able to treat things. Between this and the increase in minimum wage, a lot of businesses are going to have an extremely difficult time.
They're not going to survive, because
Yes.
when you talk about the employee relationship, you have to look at the Borrello case. Now, the Borrello case versus the Department of Industrial Relations, that's been in the law of the land for 30 years. You have AB 5 that was recently passed, doesn't do a whole lot, it codifies a little bit, but it primarily restricts high-paying lobbyists. That's all it does. It doesn't address the real problem. And I'm real concerned, again, Mark Reed and I talked about on the podcast, you got this $15 an hour minimum wage. It's already been tested. It already has been. And it was a bakery. It went out of business. It couldn't sustain itself. It could not.
Across the nation, they have proven already that the minimum wage is putting people out of business and creating a subset of individuals that will never be given the opportunity to be employed. It's basically, you can look at it as being almost racist, because it's taking the Hispanic community, the African American community,
absolutely,
and it's making a subclass of people that will never be given the opportunity, because it's like, look, I'll make a machine to do that work, that repetitive business. It's like Andrew Yang, I think, is the presidential nominee. He talks about going to some of the mid-states where they have manufacturing. You go in, there's wall-to-wall artificial intelligence, machines doing the work now.
Oh, you heard recently about there's going to be a restaurant, I think it is, here in California. It's all robotic.
Well, McDonald's is going that way.
There's no people whatsoever, period.
I have said for 25 plus years that the biggest problem in the United States is that the youth of America didn't start a job working for McDonald's. If they started a job working for McDonald's, now my peers, this was 50 years ago now, that we were 16, 17, 18.
Right, yeah, I was there.
We all worked
I was there.
What was your minimum wage when you started working?
Like 165. So but the fact is that the people
you were being paid a lot.
The people who worked at McDonald's, you'd walk into McDonald's and a young person would stride up to the counter and they'd say, "Good afternoon, welcome to McDonald's. May I take your order, please?" And they look you straight in the eye.
They'd be happy.
And now you can't even get anybody to look you straight in the eye. They have no training at all.
No.
And now those people are being replaced by keypads.
Well, if you're in the wrong part of town, all you can do is look at the menu board and you go, a number 3?
Well, and again, it's not even that.
They can't even calculate your change.
And I tell you, like me personally, I go to McDonald's. They have the menu boards we can tap. I refuse to use it. I don't, because I feel like this. Why am I doing your job and I'm going to get your paycheck? No, I'll walk up to the corner. I want you to take my order. You're going to place my order. But again, it seems like with automation, you have a dumbing down of America, because the kids don't need to know the price of item. They just push a button.
Right.
They don't need to tell anybody, without pickles out this, they just push a button. That's all it is. Yeah. It's the dumbing down of America.
Well, it's going to be becoming the automation of America, and what are we going to do with the minimum wage employees? I mean, do you think it's a little bit of could be construed as racist, Bruce?
I don't think the people who are doing are thinking about the people who they are affecting.
Right.
Mainly it
is
being
you mean the politicians
pushed.
Like Bernie Sanders, they're not thinking it all the way through of how it's
except
going
on
to
their
affect.
Personal campaign. The person except his personal campaign.
They just want
in
power.
In the state of California, these laws are really being pushed by government union operations.
Right.
And they're protected. And they want this for the fact that the higher the wages are, the higher they can argue for their wages need to be.
Right.
Of course.
And also that possibly an operation like the SEIU can unionize more people, like McDonald's staff, as if that's going to happen. So you're going to unionize the McDonald's staff, and then the McDonald's is going to have no customers.
Right.
So they don't think of what they're doing in all of this. They make up these rules, and they don't think their way through it. I did an article just recently that was a satire, because the state of California has a rule that the 11 states, the state of California and their employees cannot go there on government business.
Right.
They're saying, we're superior to you, this new governing philosophy. we're superior to you. We are not going to, because of your policies. So my satire, I laid out all the facts, and then I started with the satire that they're going to start expanding it to other things other than this was the initial law was all about
49
gender
states for Hawaii.
and they left one state out, of course, Hawaii,
Right.
because they needed somewhere to go on their boondoggles, but the fact is that this is a way they keep exporting their thought patterns.
Right.
But what they're really doing is they're exporting the people here. In the last 20 years, over 400,000 people have left the state.
Right.
We are a net loser of population, except for illegals, and we are a net. If you track the moving vans, you see that every year the moving vans have to be transported back to California empty, and they're moving elsewhere. And this has been going on for years.
Yeah.
And they're forcing people, but it gets worse. It gets worse.
Bruce, I'm actually going to have to step in. We're going to have to pay our bills, but I'm going to ask you to come back because we have way more. The only reason why you got shortchanged on this show is because of the Syria issue that's going on.
Right.
And I have a very special guest here, a friend of mine, Robert Alleva, who is going to be talking about that and what it was like. He fought with the YPG, and it's a very fascinating subject. It's a current subject and stuff. But will you come back? And I want to talk and expand the conversation even further.
Right.
Thank you for having me. I really enjoyed the conversation.
Absolutely. So when we come back, Robert Alleva is going to join us. He's 38 years old. He lives in Los Angeles. He's a professional animal wrangler and TV host who traveled to Syria to volunteer to fight ISIS and spent about 6 months volunteering with the Kurdish YPG in 2015 and the Arab Kurdish SDF in 2017. So it's going to be a fascinating conversation on what's happening today in Syria, the ceasefire that Donald Trump and Mike Pence and Pompeo actually negotiated out. So I'm looking forward to having this guest on the show and talking about the human element of what it was like fighting at the YPG and how he feels about us essentially turning our back on people who are standing by our side, fighting against ISIS, fighting against Turkey, fighting against Syria. To that, we're going to pay our bills now. Thank you, and we'll see you in about 5 minutes.
We are brought to you by Paintball USA. For the best paintball experience of your life, call 661-255-5332. Ask for April and mention the Voice of Reason and get a 25% discount off all your regular price packages. If you want a fantastic outing for the family and friends, or if you're a corporation looking for that magic team building exercise, check out Paintball USA. All packages include admission, air gun rental, complete safety equipment, party favors, and 500 paintballs to use accordingly. That's Paintball USA at 661-255-5332. Don't forget to mention the Voice of Reason to get your 25% discount. The Voice of Reason is also brought to you by churchandlaw.com at 818-230-3110. If you have any questions or need legal advice about workers' compensation, employment, and labor law, call churchandlaw.com at 818-230-3110. The Voice of Reason is also brought to you by Honda. Additionally, The Voice of Reason is brought to you by Levin and Nalbandian Trial Lawyers at 213-232-4848. If you have any workers' compensation, employment, and labor law or personal injury legal needs, call Levin and Albandia at 213-232-4848.
Hi, I want to welcome Rusty Levin and Harry Nabanian. both trial lawyers for workman comp cases. If you're injured on the job, don't hesitate. Contact an attorney. I did when I was wounded or injured on my job, and I thought I would trust my employer, and it didn't work out quite well. So I found Rusty Levin, handled my case like a professional, worked out way better than any other lawyer that I talked to would have worked out. So Rusty, tell us a little bit about your company of Levin and Nalbandian Trial Lawyers.
So at our firm at Levin Nalbandian Trial Lawyers, we handle all matters of workers' compensation, personal injury, and employment disputes, wrongful termination matters, and things like that. We were able to help Mr. Reed out with his workers' compensation case. Unfortunately, workers' compensation injury can be very stressful, intense situation. And at Levin Nalbandian, we try to get you the most benefit we can of the law, while also easing the stress and anxiety that comes along with that situation, and getting you back on your feet. My partner, Mr. Nalbandian, he handles the personal injury sides, and I'll let him take it from there.
And just like all injured employees out there, anybody else who gets injured as a result of somebody else's negligence has rights, and the rights that they need to protect immediately. And they should do that by calling Levin and Nalbandian Trial Lawyers and letting us help ease that tension off of you and get you the result you deserve, while also making sure that you get better in the progress. So we're here for you, folks.
Levin and Nalbandian Trial Lawyers is the best company for you to get a hold of when you're injured or have a personal injury. So give them a call at
213-232-4848, 213-232-4848. Thank you.
and let them handle the stress for you while you recover at home. Thank you again. Bye-bye. Back to the Voice of Reason. Welcome back to the Voice of Reason with Ted Durden, my co-host. I'm Mark Reed, and our special guest, Robert Alleva. I wanted to read, and I think because this is a smaller font, so I'm going to have to pull out my glasses. I do have snow on the roof, so I can't see anymore. This is the letter that President Trump wrote to Erdogan, president of Turkey. It says, "Dear Mr. President, let's work out a good deal. You don't want to be responsible for slaughtering thousands of people, and I don't want to be responsible for destroying the Turkish economy, and I will. I've already given you a little sample with respect to Pastor Brunson. I have worked hard to solve some of your problems. Don't let the world down. You can make a great deal. General Mazloum is willing to negotiate with you, and he's willing to make concessions that they will never have made in the past. I am confidentially enclosing a copy of his letter to me just received. History will look upon you favorably if you get this done the right and human way. It will look upon you forever as the devil if good things don't happen. Don't be a tough guy. Don't be a fool. I'll call you later. Sincerely, President Donald J. Trump." You volunteered with the YPG.
Right.
You served with the SDF in 2017 with Syria,
Yes.
right? What is your overall opinion, first of all, of the letter, just being a soldier on the ground? And I know we've talked off camera, and you've lost friends over there, brothers in arms. What is your general feeling of a letter like this from one head of state to another head of state?
It's a very interesting letter, and it has a lot of good sounding tough talk, which I liked. But it's trying to put a Band-Aid, I feel like, on what he had already done by pulling the troops back.
Mm-hmm.
Trying to, fix the dam once it's already broken. And we've had news later today that the Mike Pence and Erdogan have hammered out a deal for northern
Right.
Syria, which completely negates everything that he said in that letter. Because what was hammered out with no input at all from the Syrian Democratic Forces or the Kurds was that they were going to give Turkey everything that they wanted. And they're going to lift sanctions. There were sanctions coming down the pipe, both from the White House and
Yeah, there are
and
existing
from Congress.
sanctions that are there.
Yes.
They're staying there until after the 5-day ceasefire. And if the ceasefire does not hold, then there's going to be tougher sanctions that are implemented. What they gave Turkey, though, was Turkey has always wanted that 20-mile buffer zone, because
Right.
a lot of people and viewers here don't realize that the YPG and the PKK are Syrian-born and also Iraqi-born. And what Turkey is, correct me if I'm wrong, because you were there.
Right.
This is what I hear. is that Turkey is upset because there was a lot of cross-border attacks that are going on because they are generational enemies. You know, they say, look, they're an enemy of my ancestry, and they're an enemy of my future ancestry. And this is described by President Trump was a regional warfare, regional conflict, and he doesn't want to be in these. And this is the way he's always thought for decades, going all the way back to when he was 30, 40 years old. He says America shouldn't be in these. And even Tulsi Gabbard came out and said the same thing. We don't need to be in regime changes.
Right.
But it doesn't negate the fact of the history of the United States standing by the Kurds, one time going back with Saddam Hussein, turned their back on them. They got slaughtered. They went back, stood behind them again. There was a big conflict between the United States and Iran and in Iraq. The only thing that Saddam Hussein could do was to take it out on the Kurds once again, so he chemically killed 180,000 of them.
Yeah.
So then we needed the Kurds once again to fight ISIS, both the Syrian Kurds and the Iraqi Kurds, because ISIS was threatening, I think it was, 30,000 of the Christians up on a mountaintop?
Yazidis.
Yazidis,
Yep.
yes. So we decided to go in there and arm them. We decided to give them all the logistics and the technical aspects of warfare and stood behind them.
Right.
All of a sudden now that they're guarding, 11,000 prisoners, ISIS prisoners, Trump just without, I can't think it was completely without any kind of input from the General Chiefs of Staff. Right, it wasn't completely without any input, because he was getting the input of saying, don't do it. Mm-hmm. He was being given the input, if you do it, it's going to create a vacuum. If you do it, this is going to happen. But Trump, as unconventional as he is, just came out and said, I'm going to do it. Without even talking to the Kurds, without even talking to the PKK or the YPG, without informing anybody, he just kind of pulled it back. He sent the letter earlier in the morning prior to Erdogan going into Syria. Okay, he made the phone call, and right after that, they went into Syria. Okay, so I understand that aspect, but you developing that relationship, what mentality does the YPG and the PKK have in Syria and both in Iraq?
Okay. Clarify things real quick. It is very confusing, even for someone that's been there. The PKK was actually founded in Turkey to resist against the problems they were having, the Turks against the Kurdish communities. But they were on the wrong side of history. Turkey was already a NATO ally, and so Russia, and it was during the Cold War, backed them. So that's how they got a really bad name. YPG is a completely separate organization born in Syria. Now they do have links. There's no question about that. A lot of the people that are in YPG like to read the works of Abdullah Öcalan, who is the jailed PKK leader in Turkey.
Mm-hmm.
A lot of them support the flag. Some of them used to be in PKK. But that's not all of them. It's not even the majority of them. YPG has their own leader and their own agenda. They want they don't even want their own state. They want a semi-autonomous region in northern Syria, much like the Iraqi Kurds have.
Right.
And we all know the Peshmerga, and they had our back against the fight against ISIS over in Iraq. They were a blessing to us. No U.S. soldiers were killed in Iraqi Kurdistan after the invasion.
Right.
It was the only success really from the Iraqi invasion. So what I think the Kurds in Syria want is just to have a little bit of protection from Turkey and to have some autonomy. That may already be lost. They were forced to make a deal with Assad.
Right.
It was the lesser of two evils for them, and we don't know how that's going to go. We don't know how much autonomy.
Weren't they fighting already with on the side of Assad, or were they fighting against Assad because Assad started turning his back on them?
Yes.
Right. Yeah, that's
yes
exactly right.
Yes,
okay.
to both.
Yes
Okay.
to both. There were times where the YPG, which is the main Kurdish component of the SDF, which includes Arabs, Assyrian Christians, some Turkmen brigades, things like that. There was a time when the U.S. had all the SDF and YPG areas east of the Euphrates River, and that's where our area of influence was. There's a tiny neighborhood in Aleppo, which you remember the big
Right.
battle
Up
of
in
Aleppo,
the north.
called called Sheikh Maksud, and that is a Kurdish neighborhood, YPG controlled in Aleppo. And then you go all the way west. There's the final Kurdish region called Afrin. You're probably familiar with that.
I am.
And believe it or not, Russian forces were allied with the YPG in Afrin. The Syrian government was allied with the YPG in Aleppo. Not really love relationships, but out of necessity because they were surrounded by enemies. And then in the eastern parts, they're allied with the U.S. and had quite a few clashes between YPG and the Syrian Arab Army. So it's a very dynamic situation.
A lot of moving parts.
A lot of moving parts.
A lot of moving
frenemies.
parts. Exactly.
Like if you watch Game of Thrones, this is a real life Game of Thrones. Everyone has a big plan, and they're using different people to get it.
On that note, we're going to take a couple minute break here to pay our bills once again. So we'll be right back.
The Voice of Reason is brought to you by churchandlaw.com, 818-230-3110. If you have any questions or need legal advice about workers' compensation, employment, and labor law, call churchandlaw.com at 818-230-3110. The Voice of Reason is also brought to you by Honda. Additionally, The Voice of Reason is brought to you by Levin and Nalbandian trial lawyers at 213-232-4848. If you have any workers' compensation, employment, and labor law or personal injury legal needs, call Levin and Nalbandian trial lawyers at 213-232-4848. And now back to The Voice of Reason.
Welcome back to The Voice of Reason with our special guest, Robert Alleva. Robert, we were discussing about the massive amount of moving parts involved in this. Now, this ceasefire, they're talking about the YPG retreating and going back, and they're going to actually, Turkey's going to confiscate all their heavy armament. So they're going to probably take their small arms with them and stuff. And it's small arms to us. It's, it's pretty big stuff still. They're probably talking about their cannons and so forth they're going to have to leave behind. But do you think that they're really interested in just moving the fighting forces 20 miles out? Are they going to leave Aleppo and the other towns in there alone where just the Kurdish Syrian Kurds are at, and they're still going to live their lives happily? They just want the militaries out of there.
It's hard to say how far they want to go and what cities they want because it's changing several times a day what you're hearing. The big concern is if they do take what they say they want, which is about a 22-mile buffer zone, all the way from west to east, all the way to the Iraqi border. If you look at a map of the SDF held areas, it's usually yellow on any Civil War map you want to look at, huge swath of land, about a third of Syria. So it looks like when they push them down 22 miles, they still have plenty of room to live in. The problem is, most of that past about a few miles is Arab lands, and the Kurds have no claim to that. And that's why there's an SDF, because there's Arab units, there's Christian units in it, and most of those cities in the Arab areas actually don't have YPG in them. They have military councils. So if you're in the city of Manbij, you have the Manbij Military Council, not the YPG. What this will in effect do is take all of the major cities that are Kurdish held in northern Syria, that's all of them, and it will push the Kurds down into Arab areas, so causing a little bit, ethnic
little friction involved in it. Did they get along, or is there friction involved?
There's friction. Even back in the 1960s, the Assad regime, Hafez, I think it was the 60s or 70s, he moved a lot of Arabs north to the border regions. He wanted to consolidate his power in the border regions and not have it be Kurdish. And that's why you have cities like the town Tel Abyad and things like that that are primarily Arab. So there is a lot of tension about people taking each other's homes and things like that. And then Erdogan said he's going to move Syrian refugees that are in his country now into the new areas. They're not from there for the most part. It's sort of a double ethnic washing, basically. It's just a big mixing around. And all that's going to do is cause further conflict. This is not going to be good for Syria. It's not going to be good for...
So what Turkey is essentially doing is diluting the Kurdish people within the northern Syria.
And he's trying to...
getting rid of the forces as well that have been protecting the towns.
I don't think the deal is going to work. The first reports I'm hearing from the SDF are that they will allow the status quo as far as what Turkey has taken so far, to stairs between Tel Abyad and Sarakania, which is a huge Kurdish city. I think we're going to see more fighting. I just don't think it's going to be acceptable to them.
I think one of the biggest things that everybody is asking is that the Kurds are holding, the Syrian Kurds are holding about 11,000 ISIS prisoners. Where are they holding them at?
There's several prisons. A few are in the proposed zone.
Proposed
Turkey
buffer
wants
zone.
Buffer zone, and those are most at risk. But also, some of the ones further south could be at risk because we're seeing a little bit of resurgence of ISIS, a few more attacks. The Arab units down south, unfortunately, don't have as much experience in warfare as the Kurds do, and so they rely on them for leadership. And with all of them in the north right now, worried about the Turkish threat, some of the Arabs down south are on their own. The Syrian government's starting to come in there too. There's a bunch of oil fields they want. It just looks like it's the perfect environment for more chaos. This didn't cause any less warfare. And my biggest problem was two things. One, we all want out of endless wars. We're done with it.
Yeah.
But this is the one thing that worked. We lost 4 servicemen in Syria to eliminate ISIS. 11,000 YPG and SDF lost their lives. We
Right.
came up with a formula to protect American lives and get rid of ISIS, but there's still a huge counterinsurgency campaign.
Right.
And now we're taking the eye off that. And the other thing is, how are people going to look at America from now? We hammered out a deal with the Turks.
It's a big shift.
The joint patrol on the smaller buffer zone 2 months ago. The Kurds actually went with it, and they pulled back fighters from the border about 3 miles. They took all their heavy weapons back, and they filled in their anti-tank trenches. They filled in their fighting positions, and the U.S. said, you don't need them because we will act as your buffer against Turkey. And that made Turkey feel better, that made the SDF feel better, and then we pulled out within a few days, and there was no agreement made. So we, in effect, probably not on purpose, but we tricked the Kurds into destroying their own defenses and then pulled out.
Well, let me ask you a few questions. Okay. I'm going to ask the first obvious question. Morale. What is morale like?
Now,
Yes.
I've talked to a couple guys. I talked to my friend Michael, who's a former U.S. Marine, and he's been there since I was there last time in September 2017. So he's been there a long time. I asked him the same thing, and he said people are shocked after all the assurances that were given. There was a lot of concern for many years that the U.S. would pull out, and the U.S. said no, don't make a deal with Assad, don't make a deal with Russia. We're here. So we missed a lot of opportunities to negotiate a better deal. He described it as having a one-night stand, and they ran out on you.
Okay.
And basically
Right.
used you and left you.
Now, here's another concern that I have. Because I know, obviously, the Kurds feel betrayed, and rightfully so. The next concern is, because I heard a lot of Kurds that were retreating were cursing the United States. And again, my next concern would be, would there ever be the remote possibility that they would become terrorists and turn against the United States? That somehow they may become a part of the very people, ISIS, that they were trying to destroy. Do you see that as a risk? Because I see so many similarities when the United States has done that in the past, and it ended up biting us in the ass.
Yeah.
Do you see that as a possibility with what's going on right now?
As far as attacking U.S. forces outside of a couple of psychos, no.
Okay.
As far as ever partnering with them ever again, I don't know if they will. Because as he mentioned earlier, this has happened before, but this is the biggest betrayal. I just don't think they're going to trust us. We can't be trusted after making those deals and then not enforcing them.
And you said that and Mark and I actually talked about this on the last, I think maybe 2 podcasts ago, that when this happened, that they would possibly align themselves with Assad. And you said that's pretty much what they've kind of done. Do you know any details as far as what the arrangement that they reached with Assad? What can you tell us about that?
The official word is that it's a tactical agreement to allow Assad or pro-Assad forces to confront either Turkey or Turkish-backed jihadists in all the conflict areas, not an administration change. But that's pretty much up to Assad and his good graces, because now the Syrian military has taken over huge amounts of SDF land. If they take over the oil fields, then the Kurds can't administrate because they don't have any funding. And if we're not giving them money anymore, they're done. And it's going to be all Assad and Russia and Iran. Also, we got a word from someone in Assad's cabinet today saying that he does not want a model like in Iraqi Kurdistan, where they have a semi-autonomous region.
So he's already shut that down
He's
completely.
already shut that, and he's rejected it many, many times. We'll see what happens, but I think once this problem with Turkey and the jihadists are done, I think Assad will, consolidate his power. He's done that extremely well over the years, and I don't see any reason.
Well, he's got Iran in there, and he has Putin in there as well, Russia in there. Now, why wouldn't the leadership of the Syrian Kurds make a deal with Turkey? Sign a peace agreement with Turkey and say, you know what, we're not going to attack anymore. Let's put our war down. Let's put our generational hatred down. And this is what we want. Will you back us in defending our territory in northern Syria? Because obviously Erdogan doesn't have any problem, invading Turkey.
Right.
Even though we're NATO partners, it's kind of like, here we come. We're going to fight for our peace.
Yeah.
If the Kurd leadership there, right, made a deal with them, do you think that would be something possible?
Well, that's sort of the deal that they've had for years with the Americans. There have not been a lot of attacks from the Syrian side into the Turkish side. There's actually been more attacks and airstrikes coming from the Turkish side into Syria. It just has not been a lot of chaos. The only exception to that would be when they invaded Afrin, and there was a lot of cross-border stuff there.
Okay.
So I think with the Americans there, that was in check, and it was working.
I have one question for you, and then again, this goes to the heart of what the United States did, the betrayal they obviously feel. I want to talk about the characterization. Now, President Trump characterized the war, the battles that's been going on there for decades, as a land grab, and we had no business there. How did that resonate with the Kurds on the ground? How did it resonate with American soldiers on the ground, that characterization?
They're very upset. Even just last year, the president was saying, they're fighting for their territory, this is their land. And then now he's saying, if the Turks want to take it, it's fine. I just feel like they feel really betrayed and like no one has their back. They've done every single thing that we've asked of them.
Right.
And we have not upheld our end. So they're
They
pretty shocked.
paid the blood, we paid the treasure.
Yes.
But they are fighting for homeland.
It
It is their home.
It is their home, yeah.
They are Syrian Kurds. I
Yes.
mean, that is their homeland, and under Assad, they've been attacked. Under Saddam Hussein, they've been attacked. So they are fighting for their home. I can relate to that being native,
Yes.
period.
Yes.
On that note, I want to go to a couple personal, because we got about 2 minutes left here. Why did you want to go volunteer?
Right. Yeah, that's a $64 million question.
And because that's, I know a couple of your military buddies who've got some similar buddies. Why did you want to volunteer and go there and put your life on the line? And your buddies as well that have gone there and have stayed there.
Yeah. I think there's a lot of motivations. No one had a single motivation. Some of mine were selfish. I wanted to have a grand adventure, and I think a lot of the guys wanted that. The other motivations were, the one thing that really struck me is I watched a couple of the videos put out by ISIS. And these are targeting young, impressionable, mostly men. I picture people in their 20s, early teens, whatever, watching these videos and heading to Turkey, crossing the border, and destroying their life. People from the
Right.
West, and it was happening over and over. We were catching even Americans
Right.
trying to go over, and they're going to go over and then make some cool videos, and someone else is going to see it. It's going to keep happening, and they're going to destroy. And I remember being young, and I remember reading crazy political stuff and just eating it up, because you don't have a way of looking at the world. I just don't want these guys to throw their life away before it's too late.
Right.
And the more we allow ISIS to look cool, the more people that we're going to go over. So that's why I went. And the second time, it was personal, because we lost a lot of guys. The second time, it was just personal.
The average warrior there is similar to American warriors, our soldiers. The average family there, how would you describe them?
Oh, extremely hospitable.
Very nice people.
Yeah,
aren't they?
very nice
Yes.
people. I mean,
Incredibly.
people with nothing, and they'll try to give you everything they can. Incredible. And I'm shocked about how much they loved us. When I first went into the Iraqi side of Kurdistan, we pulled up to a checkpoint, and they saw me, and they pulled us over. And I was like, these people are going to hate me because I'm holding them up. And they just wanted everyone to gather around and say, thank you, we love you, America. Thanks for getting rid of Saddam. And I was blown away.
Right.
I was blown away. And when we got to the Syrian side and we had air power, this was in 2015, especially when ISIS outgunned us completely.
Right.
But we had some air power, and it was just, thank you, Obama. And then when I went back 2017, thank you, Trump. And we had taken so much more land, and they had given us so much. We accomplished a lot. And it gave people a third option in Syria. You had to either pick Assad, or you had to pick the rebel or jihadist areas, or now you could pick the SDF. And that was a great medium ground for a lot of people. And now that may be lost.
I want to thank you for coming and sharing. I know it's I have a lot of buddies, and it's very difficult to share. And even express that to me that you didn't ever want to do press, but this is a subject matter, and I like you to come back too, because this is not going to go away.
Yeah.
I think we're going to be dealing with this for a few more months. I'd even actually like to go over there and do a live shot over there. I mean, I'd be happy to do that. I'm old, but I ain't that old.
You go right ahead, my friend. I'll be here in the studio.
I'll bring his picture with him.
Yeah, I'll be in the
and
studio.
on that note, I want to thank everybody for letting us come into your houses, come into your cars, your phones, your computers, and watching another show of The Voice of Reason. Take it home, Ted.
And always remember, ignorance prevails when ignorance prevails when rational minds sit back and do nothing. Please be sure to join us next week for another exciting podcast on The Voice of Reason. You have been listening to Ted Durden and Mark Reed. The Voice of Reason has been brought to you by churchandlaw.com, Honda, Levin and Nalbandian Trial Lawyers, and Paintball USA. Thank you, and be sure to tune in next Thursday